don't
I
have to play
think
him every year, so I'm not worried about that. But
I think that's the perfect segue to bring up Bo Nix, bringing up Michael Penix. Let's shift to our next three topics are going to be all about college. I want to talk about the Heisman a little bit, and this is one I want to kind of turn to you a little bit about the Heisman. I want to jump in on the next topic, super heavy, but the Heisman, go ahead and talk to me about it. Was the Heisman choice the correct choice for the season, or did they get it wrong?
I was okay with it. I really was. Um, the thing about the thing about I mean, let's go through the finalists. It's weird how we're having this conversation about the Heisman. We're also kind of having this conversation about the NFL MVP. But,
Mm-hmm.
Marvin Harrison Jr. was a good player this year, but he wasn't, everybody knows what he's going to do, but he didn't tear the world down by any stretch of the imagination. And Jaden
Right.
Daniels, um, the voting wasn't even close. He ran away with it. I think a lot of times the thing with college football is the people that are on TV the most are the ones that end up winning. And,
Yeah.
it kind of went a different route this year with an LSU quarterback winning. So I can't sit here and tell you, hey, man, I watched Jaden Daniels play 10 times. I watched Caleb play 10 times. I watched Drake May play a bunch. I watched Marvin Harrison Jr. a bunch. I watched Shador a bunch. I didn't watch a ton of Jaden
Mm-hmm.
Daniels, but
Right.
just going back on the highlights and looking at it, I think it's okay to kind of have it be a little different every once in a while. Um, College football is in a huge transitionary period right now, and moving forward into what it's going to look like going forward. They have a massive controversy right now with that college football playoff. They're talking about litigation and suing and all this other crazy crap, which is probably again just good for college football because the controversy creates cash. That's an old Eric Bischoff line from WWF back in the day. Controversy creates cash, but I think that it was fine. It was fine. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Yep.
his the
I
statistics were
agree.
good. There just wasn't, the one thing that I'm, how many weeks ago, 6, 7 weeks ago, did that whole, Caleb Williams might come back to school thing disappear? As soon as he started like
Yeah.
not destroying everyone he was playing, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, no, he's going to go off to the NFL because this sucks. Nobody wants to watch this. So I think it was cool to have new blood in there. I
Yeah.
like when players win and it's not their year they're coming out. I like when we get Heisman winners like we did last year, where now we get to see them again next year. You know, I think
Yeah.
I think there's a certain somebody down there in Texas that everybody thinks is going to be in the running for it the next couple of years, and everybody's kind of hoping that he's going to be amazing because we want to crown him today, and we'll see how that goes. But I like when players win the award, and then we get to see him the next year to see how they can build on it. Because all right, congratulations,
Yeah.
you have a Heisman. Now let's see him build on it if you have an NFL career.
And talking about, people teasing returning back to college and then also being in that Heisman conversation as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. considering returning back to Ohio State. I think the only thing that is really moving him and pushing him in that direction is just he hasn't played in a win over Michigan. Suffering an injury in the third quarter of the 2022 Peach Bowl against it's Georgia too, preventing him from closing out the only college football playoff game that Ohio State played in his career too. So I think some of that's holding him back a little bit. I know there's that whole his NIL deal is between 20 to 30 million, but I've also heard that is 100% false and it's not anywhere close to that. I don't think that there's any doubt that this kid is a top 3 draft pick undoubtedly. Wherever he goes, I think he's gonna make an impact, right? I think that's kind of where everyone stands right now. And with me not watching a ton of college football until around the draft, and I start watching a ton of film in a very short amount of time. But from what I've seen from Marvin Harrison Jr., just because I end up watching all 22 film from uh, like guys coming out from last year, played on Ohio State, he just pops. He's the guy that pops. every single year. What I would consider impressive wise is when we were sitting here a couple of years ago talking about Jordan Davis, right? I'm watching film for Georgia, for Jordan Davis specifically, and the guy who pops every single time is Jalen Carter. And I go, that dude's really good. Who is this dude? Is he coming out this year? He's really good. And then he comes out the next year and he's an absolute baller, right? It's the same thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm supposed to be watching the offensive line. I'm supposed to be watching the running back. I'm supposed to be watching a different wide receiver. And instead, my eyes are locked on Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's just a guy that stands out on the field. That's what I kind of equate it to, is me watching Jordan Davis, but then Jalen Carter's popping, me watching anyone on Ohio State, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is popping. So I don't think the right move is going and returning to Ohio State. Obviously, he's going to make his decision. A lot of guys have super big loyalty to their colleges over, obviously, like, it's a big difference between like the NFL, right? In the NFL, it's whoever you're playing for, that's your favorite team, but they can always look back at their college and be like, yo, I'm Ohio State until the day I die type thing. So I think that's one thing that is the difference between college and the NFL. And I'm not sure how much he's going to weigh that.
I personally, I'm with you on the film. It's kind of funny that you brought up that situation, because I think we both had the same conversations about those two players. It's the same thing for me. Last year with the 49ers not having a first round pick, I wasn't in it too much, but I was kind of watching just to, watching a lot of film just to put my rankings together. But it was the year prior, and it was same team, man. It was Jackson Smith and Jigba. I was like, this freaking kid is like legit. And then, of course, the Seahawks draft him, and thankfully they've not used him well at all this year. But I'll be honest with you, I put zero stock in the Marvin Harrison thing going back to school. I put zero stock in that even potentially being a possibility. I think that you have to remember that these are kids and they're on this college campus and they're being pressured by adults and a whole bunch of things, and there's a whole bunch going on, and the season's basically over, and he still has a long time before draft season and all that stuff. So I think he kind of just doesn't want the spotlight on him right away. I could be wrong. I don't, that you're a top 5 pick, man. You cannot increase that. You cannot do any better.
Yeah.
And the wins against Michigan are like, Ryan Day may not even be their head coach next year. You're going to run it back with a whole new head coach. You know what I mean? I don't see that. I think that honestly would be crazy, because you can't get better than. I haven't looked at mock drafts in a minute, but I guarantee you, if I pull one up, just because we're sitting here talking about it, I'll pull one up and we're going to look at. I won't even look at wide receivers rankings. I'm just going to pull up the first mock draft that I can find. And I would almost be willing to bet you, as I click into it, and shout out Tankathon, one of my favorite websites, because they have NBA, NFL, they have MLB on there, but nobody actually pays attention to that. And just going in there and clicking at that, they have Marvin Harrison Jr. third to the Cardinals after Caleb Williams and Drake May go off the board. So it's one of those things where you have the first non-quarterback, and it doesn't matter if you're the better player, the quarterback's getting taken first. Kyler Murray went over Nick Bosa. I think the Cardinals would switch that every day of the week. You're the number one player off the board that's not a quarterback. You can't get any better than that. Why would you go back to school? Unless they're paying him $30 million in NIL, which again, I saw that also, and I saw like 10 people come out and dispute that right away, that wasn't true. I think the NIL money, we can talk about this later, maybe this offseason, but that stuff is going to start coming back down, because there's a booster out there somewhere that's paying a left tackle like $6 million this year, and they're like, hey, he sucks. Why am I paying him this money? So we're going to see that NIL money start dropping down a little bit. But I don't put any stock in him going back to school. I guess anything's possible, but that hasn't happened in so long, and all of a sudden this year has been talked about a bunch. There's no chance, man. You're a top 3 pick. Go out there. Kyler Murray can sling the rock. Go play for the Cardinals. You'll be across the way from Brown and Harris. And you know what? Matter of fact, stay in school. I don't want you on the Cardinals anyway. Come out next year. Works for me.
Now, talking about any type of hype around college, I think the biggest, it's like a Lynn Sanity almost run with Colorado. and Deion Sanders. So Deion Sanders plans for Colorado to be in the college football playoffs next season, with the college football playoffs now going to a larger format with more teams getting into it. Obviously, it's a much more likely possibility, and it's a much more likely scenario. Something that I think we have to remember with Colorado this season, obviously outside of the whole, it's the first season that Deion had it not that big of a deal. I think the over under for their wins was 3.5, and they got 4. So it's really not that big of a failure of the year. So they went 4-8 on the year, last place in the Pac-12. They already boast the number 29 upcoming class in the country, higher than teams that finished the season ranked, like Missouri, Louisville, Iowa, Oregon State. So, and Sanders went on to explain that the Colorado season looked disappointing on paper, and he talks that up a lot to close losses. And he says that they only had really 2 really bad losses on the year, and that would be to Oregon and Washington State. And the majority of the one-score games, he had key players go out. So it's bold. Obviously, it's something big to say. It is Deion Sanders, and he's going to make a show of it regardless. I don't think it's out of the possibility, but for next season, I don't know if it's really going to happen. If we're talking about the season after, I think there's definitely a good shot, but I don't know about next season.
Colorado won't even finish next season ranked. They won't even be top 25. So I was not a believer in the Deion thing. I kind of rolled my eyes at all of it. And then they came out that first week and it was like, uh-oh, here we go. I stayed up till midnight one night watching them in that overtime game. That was absolutely wild. The problem with him is they didn't do enough on the stuff in between the lines, the offensive and defensive lines this past year. They really need to beef that up. They need to get NFL quality, NFL type players on the offensive and defensive line if you want to compete with the like of, the thing is like, is Oregon going to win a college football championship anytime soon? Probably not. But Oregon's better than 98% of everything else that's out there, and they will continue to be year after year after year after year after year. They're going to be those gatekeepers that live between 5 to 8 year after year after year after year. And I don't know if Colorado can recruit, transfer portal, whatever they need to do. It's cold out there. It's an interesting place to play for sure. I'm not exactly sure if I can see it happening. I don't even know if they'll finish ranked next year. Now they got ranked once or twice this year, but I'm talking about the last couple of weeks of the college football season being ranked. I don't see it. Definitely don't see the college football playoff for them next year. I am excited about the college football playoff. I think that just because you take it from 4 teams, if you expand it, I don't think the drama goes away. I think that the drama just extends out because now there's more and more like fringe teams, because it's really easy for us to sit here and say, who are the top 4 college programs in the college football? It's easy to say that because who's elite. It's a lot harder to be like, who's 12 to 17? Let's have those rankings. Just like, let's not rank the top 25 players in the NFL. Let's rank the top 25 to 60 players in the NFL. That's much harder. So, do I see it for them next year? I don't, but that doesn't mean they can't get there. I don't know. I was not prepared for the amount of players that wanted to go play for him. It obviously makes sense, but I didn't think that they were going to be able to recruit as well because of how cold it is out there. I was wrong about that.
Right.
But there are teams in college football that have history behind them, that have proven that they will get you drafted. And obviously all the teams that are in the college football playoff this year, Oregon, I think USC going forward, the amount of money they're going to be able to spend, Texas going forward, Notre Dame going forward, these huge schools are going to rise back to, a higher level than they have been recently. And I don't see it for Colorado next year. But you know what? I'm okay with being wrong because I don't hate Deion Sanders at all. So if I'm wrong, and I love college football Saturday. I love watching Pat McAfee out there. All that stuff gets me so hyped up, man. I think college football does it way better than the NFL does on their pregame shows. And having Deion Sanders around is just better for the viewer. So,
no, I agree.
I think that Colorado's not his forever home. I think eventually, I want to see him do well just so he can get on a bigger stage. Obviously, I don't think he's ever going to go to the NFL because the act we've already talked about, the rah-rah stuff doesn't work in the NFL. But
Yeah,
I'd like to see him
for
win
sure.
just so he can get onto the bigger stage because college football is better
Yeah.
with characters. We want characters. The Michigan Ohio State thing is better because it's Harbaugh. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
college football takes a big loss if Harbaugh goes back to the NFL. So I don't see it for Colorado next year to wrap up that long point that I was trying to make, but that doesn't mean that going forward I don't see it or hope for it because I'd love to see it next year.